in this ultra high net worth space, we don't have a fee compression problem. We have a margin compression problem.
Welcome to Visionary Advisor. I'm your host, Alex Kirby, founder of Total Family. One of the most common and complicated topics that comes up in our conversations with advisors is pricing. How do you charge in a way that feels fair, sustainable, and transparent, especially when working with high net worth or ultra high net worth families? On this episode, I'm joined by Paul Ferguson from Schwab Advisor Family Office to dig into his latest white paper on the future of fees and pricing. We talk about the shift towards hybrid pricing models, why old school AUM structures are getting challenged, and how transparency isn't just a trend, it's becoming a strategic advantage. We're here talking about the fees and pricing for the ultra high net worth client services white paper, Paul, that you did for Schwab Advisor Family Office. You wrote this. Did you write this alone?
No, I wrote this with Jamie McLaughlin, who is a mentor of mine, pioneer in our family office industry.
Yeah. And I think it's cool because you have a really unique look at these family offices from where you sit at Schwab. Can you just tell us about what that looks like, that landscape?
Yeah, so at Schwab Advisor Services, we custody now for 16,000 RIAs, about 4.5 trillion in assets. And our family office group works with 110 firms. So 110 out of the 16,000 is who we work with. Half of our clients are multifamily offices, and the other half are single family offices that have a direct custody relationship with Schwab. And if you look at Cerule's list of their top 50 MFOs, we have a relationship with over 90% of the top 50 multifamily offices in the country. So you're absolutely right. We feel that gives us a very unique perspective on getting to see the broad industry of ultra high net worth RIA business.
Yeah. So you have to be a pretty put together family office to be in the Schwab Advisor Family Office group. It's an elite group of wealth firms.
Yeah, there's a criteria we have. It's an offer that doesn't have any additional fees to be a part of, but it is invitation only. We're working with a very select number of firms. So there are criteria in terms of assets at Schwab. We have an additional insurance requirement because the clients have higher net worth and we have additional entitlements for the firms. So we require additional insurance. And then there's also a requirement in the number of ultra high net worth households that they service. So percentage of their book.
That's great. You and I either met through Family Wealth Alliance or Ultra High Net Worth. I don't remember which industry group. I think some of the stuff we're going to talk about, although, this paper is about ultra high net worth, I think these trends are impacting high net worth and are going to keep coming down market. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And particularly with companies like yours, which is really powerful in that, I've always said this about ultra high net worth versus high net worth. And that is, as wealth goes up, complexity certainly increases. What else increases is the ability to have the capital to be able to buy and pay for specialized services. And a lot of the providers in this space historically have been a significant cost. So it only made sense for families that were higher on the wealth spectrum. That doesn't mean that families with less net worth couldn't benefit from those same services and have the same needs. And so I definitely see companies like yours being created and going downstream and providing a lot of these benefits to high net worth families.
Yeah, I think that's great. We'll link the white paper in the show notes, but you have this graph of the number of ultra high net worth households since 2011, and that has increased 5 times the overall population over that time. I don't feel like the number of wealth advisors that serve the ultra high net worth area of the market has increased 5 times. Do you believe that there is a shortage of advisors who are equipped and ready to support this population, or do you think that we have kind of the advisor population that we need to support ultra high net worth today?
Absolutely a shortage. And if you look at the projections of the number of advisors that are going to be needed to serve this market, we are way understaffed in terms of having enough people focused on this market. One of the things we know with our unique seat at Schwab and being able to see a broad base of the industry, of the RIA industry, is that this area, and you can see from the charts in the white paper, the number of increasing wealth in this country, the number of increasing households with significant wealth. This is the fastest growing area for most of our clients. For most
Yeah.
advisors, this is the fastest growing area of their business. But what's fascinating, and I came across this statistic when looking at Schwab, as I said, Schwab has 16,000 RIA clients who custody with us. 90% of the ultra high net worth households who use Schwab for custody are not with an RIA who specializes in ultra high net worth.
Okay.
So what that tells us is out of these 16,000, they all have one or two ultra high net worth households. And so we on my team do a lot of work with these RIAs who come to us and say, I have an RIA with 400 million in assets, but I have one $75 million client. That's a
Right.
huge percentage of my book. I don't want to lose this client. How can I wrap around them ultra high net worth services and create, for lack of a better term, a family office experience?
Yeah. And you help them with that.
Yes.
I feel like the answer is always transparency. And we can talk about that, but I want to reference this AUM fee. I think most people know what that is that are listening to this podcast if we talk about an AUM fee, but Family Wealth Alliance did a pricing study too, and I know that's a Schwab property. I don't know if I was supposed to have access to this data, but it flew out a window and I caught the report and I saw that AUM, or an asset-based only fee, going back to their 2015 study, it was about 58% of those had asset-based only fees. And go to the 2024 study, it's now 30%.
Yes. Yep.
And so I feel like there's this thing happening where everyone said they're a fiduciary and now they're going to charge the asset fee. That to me feels like an older message. And now we see this AUM fee kind of continuing to go down. Do you think that is going to continue in 10 years? Do you think that number is going to be even lower?
Yeah. And just to be clear, I don't think that fees are necessary. Fees are not going down.
Right.
Yeah. What's going down is the percentage of firms that are only charging an asset-based fee. Yes.
Yes,
And
thank you.
that if there's a theme of this white paper that Jamie and I wrote, it is that firms need to consider a hybrid fee structure. It
Okay.
is kind of the punchline of the paper. And the hybrid fee structure is one where we are fine with AUM-based fees for investments, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that clients don't necessarily want to pay an asset-based fee for services unrelated to the investments. Why should I
Right.
pay a percentage of my assets for a bill pay? Why should I pay a percentage of my assets for financial accounting, reporting? So there's anecdotal evidence on that, and more firms are looking at that. And I personally, and this is in the white paper, feel from a fiduciary duty standpoint, retainer based fee for non investment services is more transparent to the client. If
Right.
I just charge the client one AUM fee and wrap all the services into that, client doesn't know what they're paying for what service. And
That's right.
we know clients are willing to pay when there's value. If
Yeah.
there's value being provided, they will pay for it. But the biggest problem with not separating out non-investment service fees is margin compression. If you look at these firms, 83% of RIAs in the high net worth space, not ultra high net worth, 83% in the high net worth RIA market have added additional services the last 5 years, according
Yeah.
to Cerulli.
Okay.
And this is with the trend of increasing complexity. As complexity increases, families are asking their advisors to do more.
Let's talk about this. So the ultra high net worth and high net worth, what are those cutoffs? Everyone's a little bit kind of all over the map. I actually want to create even more subcategories.
Yes.
They're like, it's ultra high net worth. That means you have more than $30 million. It's like, well, I have $2 billion. So, it feels like we have to
That's a
kind of,
big category.
yeah, it's a big category. So what is the number in like that you reference for the ultra high
Yeah.
net worth and
So
high net worth?
the two who I think have done the best at creating categories are Ultrada, WealthX, and Cerulli.
Okay.
Ultrada has 4 categories, actually 5. So 5 categories, but let's start with ultra high net worth. That's the one everybody asks about when we use this term. What do we mean? And this is another, just as an aside, Alex, this is my next white paper, thought leadership I'm working
I was
on.
going to ask you what's coming.
Yeah, I'm calling it It's Noisy Out There. And it's the fact that in this industry, you should see this. I'm giving another presentation here in a while, but I have this chart and I went to like all these RIA websites and just wrote down terms, right? And you see things like,
Was holistic on there?
oh my gosh, yeah. Holistic wealth management, integrated wealth management, family office services, comprehensive financial planning, integrated financial, like all these terms, nobody can define any of these, right? There's
Yeah,
no
sure.
standard definitions in our industry. We should start with the basics, which is what is an ultra high net worth client? And Ultrada defines it as 30 million net worth and up. And I think that's probably the most consistent definition out there for ultra high net worth. The reason I think it is at 30 million is at that level, at least this year, you have a taxable estate.
I got it.
A married couple has a taxable estate, right? With the
Okay.
exemption around 14, 15, 14 and
Don't get
change.
into the weeds on me there.
It's just a taxable estate. When you have a taxable estate, that's when complexity starts to ratchet up.
Got it.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is now at Schwab, we use 20 million investable
That's what I thought. Okay.
instead
20
of
million
30 million
investable
net
versus
worth.
30 million net worth.
Yeah, now that's because we're a custodian and we can only custody liquid assets. And so it's
Right.
easier for us to define in terms of liquid. If you think about it, a $20 million liquid asset family is going to be worth 30 million because they're
Right.
going to have homes, they're going to have real estate, they're
Real
going to
estate.
have
Yeah.
other. So I think those definitions are consistent, whether you call it 30 million net worth or 20 million liquid. Those are pretty
Yeah.
consistent.
I feel like, so I was talking about it before, like the product-based fees, charging commissions, all this, right? So it's kind of by the wayside. And then everyone goes to the fiduciary fee,
Yeah.
which, there's a lot of private equity people coming into this space because turns out if you charge 1% forever, it's a pretty valuable business in terms of the cash flow that it generates, right? So that's a good model for people. But I think what you're talking about is how these models have evolved to go beyond the assets into all these other areas you reference, like certainly family dynamics, what we do, estate and financial planning, tax and charitable services, bill pay, et cetera, all this stuff, right? We talked about this at the meeting in New York, but they were sort of saying like, if you have all these things included for your clients, and then the client says, well, I don't want bill pay, do you reduce their fee?
Right.
Right. And the answer is most of the time, no.
No.
And so I think as you move up, if you're an RIA or you're a wealth advisor and you're like, I want to move up the type of client I'm serving, that person is getting more sophisticated.
Yeah.
They're smarter. That doesn't mean they're smarter than you or they're the smartest person on the planet, but you don't you can inherit money, but you don't, in general, these are intelligent people that are at this level of the market. So to me, transparency and not running away from the conversation about your fee, right?
Yeah.
You can't be scared of it. If
That's
you're
right.
scared of it, then in the back of your mind, you're like, am I not, creating the value that I sort of think I am? versus being open and transparent and honest, separating out that, I think we're both going to land on this hybrid model that you're talking about, but like separating out the AUM side of the business, which by the way is lower margin,
Yeah,
and then looking at some of these other areas and figuring out what your firm does well might not ultimately lead to net all-in margin compression.
exactly. Where margin compression happened, what I say, if you look at, there's also a chart in the white paper on the fees for a
Mm-hmm.
50 and $100 million mandate over the
Yep.
last 10 years. And they are within 2-3 basis points of each other over the last 10 years. So what I say in this ultra high net worth space, we don't have a fee compression problem. We have a margin
Okay.
because
Right.
these firms are
Right.
charging
Right.
the same fee they did 10 years ago. But we know from Cerulli, 93% of firms are doing more for their clients. They're adding services. So they're adding all these services and charging the same fee. And we know complexities increase. So everything has to be customized at this ultra high net worth level.
Yeah.
So it takes so much more time, so much more customization to work with these families. Their margins are really being compressed. Now, the way to address
Mm-hmm.
that, we feel, is the hybrid fee. Charge AUM fee for the investments and a retainer-based fee for non-investment services. And what you do is you have the best at this I've seen are the CPA firms, right? You have a
Okay.
statement of work, scope out what you're going to do, and say, we're going to do some estate planning and philanthropic planning this year, maybe some family dynamics. We're going to have some recurring services like bill pay. These are all going to be in an engagement letter, retainer based statement of work, paid quarterly, same time as the investment fee. It's just 100,000 for the year,
Yeah.
25,000. Then what happens is you get to the end of the year, and what do clients do? They forget. They forget what you did for them and the benefits that you made. So it helps to prepare a year-end review where you say, here's everything we did for you this year, and we're revising a retainer next year. And it gives you the ammunition to do
Two things I would say to advisors who are listening to this thinking, these guys are crazy.
that.
Like I can't do this. I think in the spirit of transparency with the clients or authenticity with the clients, when you go to talk to them about pricing changes, you can handle it the same way that you handle the estate conversation, where you say, we're trying to figure this out and we're hoping you can help us. We're trying to make our pricing more transparent. I'm not 100% sure that we're going to get it right this first year or this next year. We'd love your feedback. We want to make sure that you understand this entire thing. We don't feel like the pricing is sort of as clear as it needs to be. What client wouldn't respond well to just an authentic, open comment like that? Are you okay with that, us recommending that approach?
Absolutely. And I have some other recommendations there as well. I know several clients who have hired consultants to help them come in and do pricing studies with their clients. One
Mm,
thing we know in our industry is that advisors, often the people selling the business, are the ones setting the fee. So there's no standard across the firm from
yeah,
one advisor to the next. One may feel that they need to discount the fee substantially to get the business. So what
right.
happens is, from an equity standpoint, you have two clients, similar situation, similar complexity, paying two very different fees. And at the same time, we know that advisors don't periodically talk about fees. They set
Right.
it
I
one
want to
time.
get to that. I want to get to that too, because I thought that
Yeah.
was like one of my favorite things you said in this white paper.
Yeah. They set it one time and then they never discuss fees again for the life of the relationship.
Never speak of it again.
Never speak of it again.
Yeah.
So part of this is exactly what you're saying, having open, honest conversations with the client, explaining why the pricing methodology is better for them. It's more transparent.
Yep.
And that aligns with the values of the firm, and explaining that if we are, as a firm, are going to be profitable and have a sustainable business to serve you and future generations, we need to make sure it's sustainable. So we need to have profit based on the services that we're providing and receiving.
Right.
So, but what I was going to say in terms of advising these firms on how to have the conversation, it is difficult. It is not easy. I will say
Mm-hmm.
things. It's easier with new clients than it is
Sure.
with, right? So
Yep.
when you're onboarding a new client, explaining your fee that way is easier than going to a client you've had for 10 years and saying, we're changing your pricing.
Yep.
Second thing is confidence among the advisor is just critical. You almost have to have a change management rollout education process for the advisors and the people who are going to be speaking about the fees.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have to understand. The third thing I would say is that some firms have hired outside consultants, like Jamie does this, has gone in pricing engagements, review the pricing of the entire book, and be able to empower the firm to have the conversations to increase pricing. And he's gone in and firms have just increased prices 2 to 3 basis points for all clients. Just sent a letter. The feedback is 98% of clients do not even respond to the letter. They're fine with it.
Right. Right. Right.
2% call and say, what took you so long?
Right. Right. That's really, really interesting. I want to get back to the hybrid model for a second. So it's like AUM fee, and then you're saying retainer, but that could be project based, hourly based, service based, right? There's a bunch of different ways to do that other side of the fee.
I'm not a big advocate of hourly.
Okay.
And there's several reasons for that. I think first, historically, attorneys and CPAs have charged hourly. I think that creates a different relationship with the client that you don't want.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is when we wrote our first white paper, the Multifamily Office of Tomorrow, interviewed a bunch of multifamily offices and learned. I was trying to identify best practices and say, okay, here's what a good MFO business model is. What I came away with was they were just as different as their clients are. They were so different from one another, different services, different ways they charge, different professionals, different service delivery. Everything was very, very different. But there was one constant among all these firms, and that was they had become the client's first call.
Mm.
And they were the first call for everything, not just financial matters. One told a story of traveling in Africa and they didn't have enough pages in their passport to get back to the United States. You have to have an empty page for the
That's right.
stamp. And so who did they call? They called their MFO, and the MFO got it taken care of, right? Another one was traveling in Italy and was ill, needed a plane back to the United States within 45 minutes, and they made it happen. So when clients view their MFO as their primary trusted advisor, I don't think you want an hourly charge because clients start to think if I call them, I'm on the clock
Right.
and you're
Right.
stopping them from calling.
Maybe you don't price it hourly, but knowing in general how
What it
many
costs.
hours
Oh, yes.
you're
So,
you're going to be sort of, if you're doing a foundation project, maybe you charge X and you know that that's going to take you about 10 or 12 hours to do it. And you can price that at a normal margin that you're comfortable with versus just doing I agree on the hourly
yeah,
fee structure. I don't think anyone likes hourly. I've never met an attorney who even, just the tracking of it all. It's just, I don't know
yeah.
if it's great for
And
relationships.
you're exactly right. Now, that's a different issue to me. And
More
we
of a
talk about
cost.
this. Yeah, it's more internal cost accounting.
Yeah.
How much should we charge for the services we're providing?
Hmm.
And there's there's different theories on this, but what Jamie and I advocate for in the paper, we're not fans of tracking time for everybody all the time. I think
Right.
that can create a different atmosphere with it. Now, some firms do that and have a lot of success doing that. A lot of, the accounting firms all do that. And the accounting firms with RIAs do that, where they track hours. Certainly that's going to get you the best data, right? The best way to charge. You're going to be able to find out which employees takes 4 hours for a project that another employee does in an hour. You're going to be able to identify things. But what
Yeah.
Jamie and I advocate for in the paper is random sampling, is doing, let's track costs on a handful of projects to give us a baseline for what we should be charging. So picking, 2 or 3 different engagements, different types of projects. So one is an estate planning project, right? Let's track costs for that, and then we have some baseline.
Yeah. I think it forces, if you're going to go hybrid, it forces the RAs to figure out what they're good at and what they can do,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's going to be some obviously one-off things like the passport, that's probably not going to be in your standard service offering, but you have financial planning, should be able to figure out about how long that takes, charitable planning, tax, family education. I don't know what really falls into that. Every time I see education, it's always financial education for the rising gen. And
Yeah,
I have a bone to pick with this because we don't have a lot of high net worth clients who are like, my kids don't understand checking accounts. And I feel like a lot of them can close the gap on financial literacy, general education about leadership and communication. And that's just a specific bone to pick. But
completely agree with you on that. Everyone talks about family education, and I'm not sure what they're doing or what they mean by
yeah,
it. Again, it's one of those terms where we could be saying that and mean totally different things.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I only had 2 small bones to pick respectfully because we love Schwab and we love you, Paul, but just 2 small respectful bones to pick. One is top strategies used to pursue the next generation of clients. Number 1 is our shared friend Jay Hughes says we should say rising gen, not
Yes. Yeah.
next gen.
Next gen. Yes.
The top strategy was engaged with clients' children. I don't feel like that's a strategy. I feel like it's you need something to engage them around.
Yeah. No, you're
You know
right.
what I mean?
Absolutely right. Where that comes from, and I'm not sure what are you looking at there? Is that
I'm looking at it, it's page 12 in the white paper. It's
the
like
white paper?
engaging with the next generation of clients can be important for the long term, which we obviously agree with. And I think most wealth
Yeah.
advisors
Okay. And this is
who we call visionary advisors, they want to engage with the rising gen. You need a way to do it. You have to have something that's going to create that
right. You
that
can't
natural
just
bridge.
take them to lunch and think you've got
Right.
that box checked, right?
Right. Exactly right.
That is from our benchmarking study is where that data came from. And so our benchmarking team added that
Can
chart to the white paper. But I totally agree with you. You have to have a strategy around engagement and what the purpose of the engagement is, because we know this generation wants to engage differently with their advisors
yeah,
through technology, through, and not in big, long 60 PowerPoint presentations, right? They're not, if you try and engage with them that way, it's not going to be successful.
that's exactly right. And if when I know you guys do those studies every year, I always don't like the choices in a couple of the questions. So if the benchmarking people want to talk to me, I will gladly spend time with them because I think even on we talked about the non-investment services. I think we could, you could look at some of these things a little bit differently just from what we're hearing wealth advisors help people with.
Yeah.
It's growing rapidly in terms of the number of services that I think are in the scope of a multifamily office.
Absolutely. Our problem with the benchmarking study is we've tried to get a cohort of multifamily offices
Mm.
right now. And here's the problem with a lot of the data is I don't know if I should even explain this, but it's based on AUM, right? So,
Right.
I always use the example of a boutique multifamily office. Imagine a firm that has $1 billion in assets and 10 families. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I call that a boutique multifamily office. They've got
Agreed.
100% ultra high net worth clients, 100 million average.
Yeah,
They only have 10 relationships.
that's
That
right.
is much different than a firm with 2,000 clients and a billion in assets.
That's right.
But in our
That's exactly
benchmarking
right.
study, those are in the same group.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, like that, the most helpful thing for the advisors listening is like you just got to be realistic about what type of firm you are. That doesn't mean you can't change or evolve, but if you are a $400 million firm with one, $60 million client, like you said, and then you have 500 other clients, it's more like that ultra high net worth client is the anomaly
right.
than the other way around. And I think it's okay to just we need lots of firms to support, like, the wealth is growing in this country and will continue to grow. It's like we need lots of different firms. It's just being realistic about the type of firm you want to serve. Everyone wants to serve ultra high net worth. Everyone would love to have one client with $60 billion,
Yes,
but it's just not
absolutely.
reality.
And you're exactly right. And I think advisors have an opportunity, and I would love to see this happen in our industry. I don't think it will, but I
Mm.
think it should. And that
Hey,
is,
I'm an idealist. Like,
yeah.
let's
So
go. Let's
here's
hear it.
my idea. Why can't RIAs partner together? Why can't, if I'm an RIA with 500 families and I have one $60 million client, why can't I reach out to an MFO who
Yeah,
offers a la carte services to those clients
yeah.
and partner with them to do the services that I don't do?
I love it so much. It's like,
And
if you think about, I think, again, the messaging of it too, to be like, look, you're a $60 million client. Our next biggest client is five. And my biggest fear is that we're not supporting you in the way that you need to be supported. I reached out to a partner who has a lot of experience. We're going to work on that. If you're a client, what a breath of fresh air
oh my gosh,
that
yeah.
that would be, that someone is actually thinking not in a self-interested way, but truly thinking from a client-centric fiduciary way, instead of just being like, I want to hold on to this client because I love that. Is there examples of firms that are doing that right now? You don't have to say names, but like, does it exist?
It does exist, and it's very few and far between, usually because the advisor who owns that relationship is so worried about losing that client, right? They
Yep.
don't want the best MFO in the country to steal that client from them.
Of course. Of course.
But it does happen. I know of a situation where this advisor called me and said, I literally, I know I'm in over my head. And this client has 2 or 300 million, just had a
We've
liquidity.
gotten those calls
Yeah.
together. We've had a couple of those.
Yeah, that's right. And I need help on this. And so
Yeah.
they told me I've actually reached out to this multifamily office to see if they'll partner with me on this client. And I was blown away. I was like, that's fantastic, because that's exactly what I was going to recommend.
Yeah.
But most
That's
advisors
great.
are unwilling to do that.
Hmm. Okay. On the year-end client review checklist,
Yeah.
I love this. And my only request is, can we move up values? You have mission, vision, and values as an appendix. That hurt me to the core. That was an appendix. To
Okay.
me, that feels like it goes in the executive summary.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But here, in my
That hurt a
defense,
lot.
we had done a full mission, vision, and values exercise with the family. This is based on a real life
Yep.
report I did.
Okay.
We had done that with the family, and we had prepared a whole report summarizing all of it. And so this was like the stuff in the appendix was, I'm a firm believer in, if you're going to create a PowerPoint, right? I've read this presentation method that I've implemented, and most PowerPoints are 50, 60 pages.
Yeah.
And if you sit down with somebody going through that PowerPoint, they're really talking about 5 or 6 pages, and
Right.
they're skipping the rest or
Right.
flipping through them. And what I've learned through this presentation method is your presentation should be 5 or 6 pages. If it's not something you're going to talk about in the meeting, it should be in an appendix. So in this example, this was a meeting where we were just going through the first 7 items, and it wasn't something we were reviewing with the client that day. But good point. That you're right.
I'm giving you a hard time,
Yeah.
but I'll say for the visionary advisors, we define vision as values, purpose, and roles on the personal side. So
Mhm.
when we say vision, we're commonly referring to values and purpose. They're together. Mission to us is more of a goal for a family. And as we
Okay.
talk about, some of these like industry terms that we're trying to get people to understand better, purpose is something that drives you. It's your North Star.
I like that. Yeah.
Your values are what's important.
Right.
And then your mission, you do achieve. Your mission might be to get the kids out of the house, to retire, to start a foundation, to do
Okay.
whatever.
So,
The
yeah.
mission, that's just how we think about it.
Okay. That's good to know.
And we love starting meetings with that
Yeah.
because it's so
Just
broad.
reviewing it. I
Yeah,
agree. That makes
put
sense.
it up there. It's like purpose, values. Have these changed? No, but it's like that's a great reminder of what we're
Great
trying to
level
do here.
set in every
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
That's good feedback. And you just gave me another idea. You know what else I would add here now that I think about it? And I can't believe I didn't think of this. I would have an appendix with a glossary,
That's a great idea.
because one of the biggest problems in our industry is everybody is using these terms. As we talked about the noise, everybody's using these terms and nobody knows what they mean. So let's define them. Let's give the family something.
Yeah,
Here's how we're using this term. Here's what it means for you, right?
that's right. We're always pushing like plain English terms, like
We are
things that you got to
terrible at.
remember that like the non-financial spouse, the kids, they might not have the level of sophistication that an investment professional has. And so it sounds cool to say acronyms and all this, make everyone realize how smart we are, but what it ends up doing is making the other people in the room feel dumb,
Yes. Yes.
right?
And even the wealth creator, I've seen it over and over again, or they know what they made their wealth in. Maybe
Yeah,
that's a family business, right? They know that business so well, like
that's
great,
right.
great. They don't know financial services.
That's right. That's
And we
right.
use terms like customized financial planning versus integrated financial planning. Like
Sure.
they don't know what that means. And
Sure.
what I want to go into on my white paper, my next one is, imagine a family who has a liquidity event and
Mm,
they're talking with JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, which are a private bank, right? Northern Trust, a trust company, Merrill
yep.
Lynch, Morgan Stanley, a wirehouse, and an RIA.
Yep.
You've got four different regulatory regimes, four different standards of care, four
That's a great
different
point.
service offers, four different ways they charge, the way their advisors are compensated. Very, very different in terms of what they're going to receive. And they're trying to compare them
Yeah.
and say this one's better than this. It's not apples and oranges,
Right.
it's oranges and cars. I mean, it's like and so there's a tremendous amount of education needed. And there's a lot of what the Ultra High Net Worth Institute is doing with their glossary and trying.
Yeah. The wealthosaurus.
Yeah.
I think it's great because, like, it's a great exercise for any firm to think about that type of stuff because many times we're all saying words. And when you just go like one level deeper, it's like, wait, what do you mean by that? Because I meant this.
Yeah.
And it's helpful, if you can explain it, if you can't explain it in a simple way, you probably don't understand it that well.
That's right. One little story about
Oh,
this
yeah, sure.
on terminology. So I'm having this conversation with Jamie McLaughlin, and we're talking, and it's a perfect example of this because we're both, know this industry very well.
Yeah.
And we're talking about an RIA, an advisor. And I used the term independent. And I said, well, that's an independent advisor. And he's like, what are you talking about? They're not independent. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, they have private equity.
Hmm.
And I said, well,
That's interesting.
I was like, that's not how I use independent in this space. Independent to Schwab is the independent RIA space, meaning they're
It
not
just means,
with
all
a
right. Yeah.
wirehouse or a
Right.
private bank. But he had here's two people who are thought leaders in our industry. who have a totally different understanding of one of the basic terms that we use every day.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Isn't that interesting?
I do wonder if that gets traction. I don't know if that'll get traction or not, but that is very, very interesting because if firms had to sort of market themselves as being owned by a private equity firm, and that would mean they can't use that word independent, that would be
Well, and
very, you know.
I'm not making a judgment there. I think
No, no, of course,
I
of
mean, I
course.
think
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, me
think
neither.
yeah, but
Me neither.
and private equity, totally different topic, but private equity has done a lot for our industry in terms of
Totally agree.
making these firms able to provide all these services in-house
Yeah.
and being able
Yep.
to, provide the capital to do that. So,
Yep. I totally agree. I don't think it's a bad thing.
yeah, I don't, yeah,
No, it's not just blanket bad.
right.
Right. Okay. So on the reviewing the fees annually, which I think this is probably where we'll close it because we're getting up on time. The reviewing the fees annually, I loved this. You have Family Wealth Alliance said only 53% of firms review their fees more frequently than every 5 years. That's crazy. And then you reference Matter, and we had Luke on from Matter on this podcast. And I know that they're hybrid.
Yeah.
And the thing that I liked about their approach, and you reference them in this paper, that's why I'm bringing them up, is that it seems like they just have really open conversations with their clients about their
Mhm.
fees. And they're like, hey, look, we were billing you blank. We did a ton this past year, so we actually underbilled you a little bit. We're going to increase that. And the
Exactly.
clients are like, sounds good.
Yeah.
And then the following year, it's like, hey, we actually did it a little bit less. It's not always an increase in fee. Sometimes it can be a reduction in fee. But I do think getting in the habit of talking about that, it doesn't have to be the exact way they're doing it because they're a pretty special firm in the higher end space. But the review of the fees annually is very interesting to me. So if there's an advisor listening, Paul, who's like, this is crazy. I would never review the fees annually with my clients. What would you say to them?
Well, I would use an example that I often use here, which is imagine a family goes through a liquidity event, sell a business for 100 million, and you onboard them. Well, what are you going to do the first year? You can't do everything, right? So the first year, you're usually going to focus on deploying the assets. We're going to get invested in the market. We're really going to do a lot of that investment planning. I almost think of this as a client relationship timeline, right? So first
Yeah.
year, we're going to deploy the asset. Second year, let's update your estate plan. Let's go through the big exercise, do all the
Yep. Yep.
planning, look at all the options, right? Third year, let's focus on philanthropy. Then maybe we get to family dynamics and education. Maybe we change that order because
I probably would change that order, but
yeah, we would do the family dynamics before the estate planning. That would
yeah,
probably make a lot of sense, right?
sure, sure.
But you know what I'm saying. The
Yep.
point is, if you don't review fees annually, you don't know what the scope of work you're going to be doing for these families is going to change. And so, regardless of what you do over those 4 years, some of those years you're going to be spending a lot more time with that family than the others. And so, think about your staff cost, your cost of engagement of your employees. All of those things are going to not be able to be recovered unless you review these fees annually.
Yep. Yep. And it gives you the opportunity to increase prices in those respective areas without making drastic moves on the AUM side, right? I think I love the idea of the client journey because you could almost contrast the two styles to say, okay, if you're paying 70 basis points forever, here's what this is going to look like. We're going to charge, 35 basis points on the AUM fee. These first few years are going to be a little bit more on the fee side, but then we typically see a drop. And then sometimes if we start working with children or this happens, these could go up, but our goal is for you to really understand, like, if you're paying us more money in a given year, we're doing more for you.
Yes.
I think people would very much respond to something like that.
And I will also point out there are firms that don't even wait till year end. There's some firms, and this happens with these families. Let's say at the beginning of the year, I scope out the year-long retainer for the work I'm going to do. And they call in July and say, I'm buying a plane. The first thing I think is that's at least 100 hours of work, from talking with the aircraft brokers and setting up the pilots and the maintenance and the storage and the insurance and the lending. I mean, that is a lot of work on a project that wasn't contemplated at the beginning of the year.
Right.
So a lot of firms come in and say, we're going to adjust the fee mid-year for this additional project.
That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
You just got to, you need to communicate that. Now, a lot of them say, you know what, we will wait till the end of the year and then we'll adjust at that point. But there are a lot of firms that now will adjust mid-year. And it's just about setting the expectation with the client is, if there's something that changes this mid-year, we're going to come back and renegotiate.
Oh, this is so helpful. That's all we have for you today, Visionary Advisors. Thank you, Paul Ferguson from Schwab Advisor Family Office, for coming on to educate us about fees and pricing. Until next time, remember, the future of wealth starts with you. I am Alex Kirby, founder of Total Family.